Hello and welcome to this edition of Bayou Time. I'm your host, Keith Whiteside, licensed clinical social worker with Terrebonne Home Care. I appreciate you joining us very, very much. We here at HTV certainly care about bringing you all the updates that we can. The best way to do that, find out the man that knows those kinds of things. For us, that's Earl Hughes. Earl, welcome back to the program.
Hey, Keith. It's good to be here. It's been a while since I've been on the show. So
I know
I'm glad
that's
to be
right.
here today.
Yeah, exactly. Glad you're back. And you waited for the cool weather. So I know you were waiting for the cool weather. So, we get a little bit of a cool snap. You're like, hey, I can come on now.
Yeah.
So, speaking of cool weather, we always, for me, the cool weather is always this inclination that we may be coming to the end of hurricane season. And, man, I got to tell you, it's just a nice blessing again this year.
Yes, it was good for us.
Right.
In fact, it was good for the most of the coast of the United States. We had the National Hurricane Season was busy. We still had a lot of storms out there.
Right.
And, most of them stayed out into the Atlantic. We had a few close calls along the eastern coast. But here in the Gulf area, it was pretty quiet. And we needed another year quiet.
We just did. We needed it for the recovery.
Yeah. And so I'm praying for another year.
Yeah.
I don't like to ask for too much at a time.
It's early, right? November 2nd. Hey, God, just in case you were wondering, we'd love another break next year.
But, we're still in hurricane season, which lasts till November 30th. And then, the last few years, though, we've had some early storms, like in January and February. If you remember the last season, we had it in January. It was a subtropical deal. I don't think they named it, but they had something.
Right.
So, with the warming of the climate and everything in the Gulf waters and the waters of the Atlantic and El Nino, and we may have something in January. Usually, it doesn't affect us.
Right.
It's somebody had mentioned that they would start hurricane season earlier.
Wow.
But I don't see that happen.
Okay, yeah.
But
we need a lot more data that shows that we need to know that or need to do that.
Sure.
But we've had several changes this year. And we talked about it before hurricane season. We have this extended look at the forecast now. And we were able to look 7 days out at some of these waves becoming storms, and we got to watch most of them move north.
Exactly.
And that was all based on some of the predictions that they said because of this westerly flow, right? And how that was going to affect. And so it's interesting that we think about all these things on the front end. I love the recap that says a lot of those things came to fruition.
Yeah, and I think El Nino had an effect.
Mm-hmm.
It's still going to continue to affect us during the wintertime. Typically, when we have an El Nino winter, it's colder and a little wetter for us.
Mm-hmm.
So we definitely could use the rain.
Yes, absolutely.
And, after the summer that we had, we definitely could use the cooler weather.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that a little bit later about some of the impacts of some of that dry air and a lot of that heat. But we'll take cold and wet over any hurricane any day.
Yeah, but once again, as we come to the end of hurricane season, recheck your little supplies that you have. Okay. If there's anything in there that might be expired or you need to get rid of, now's a good time to do that so you automatically get prepared for the next year. And you may need some of those supplies if we have a severe winter.
Right.
If we get, a few days of an ice storm or something, you're going to be limited at going to the store because unfortunately, we don't know how to drive when the roads are iced over.
We don't know how to drive when it just starts getting a little cool and wet.
But now,
so we sure don't know how to drive when it's icy.
And now's a good time to check your bag.
Check your bag, check your batteries, check your water, right?
And your
check
batteries.
Your meds.
And just to continue to be prepared throughout the year for any event that may occur in our area.
Yeah, and while we're talking about that, it's important that if, in fact, we have some ice and we have some loss of electricity, just follow those guidelines I know generators are now much more popular now that a lot of homes have been restored. Let's make sure we do that with good venting, far enough away from the house and never inside. Just smarter things that we need to do for that.
Right. And, and as we come into the wintertime, people need to start preparing for the winter, making sure that if you have gas heaters, make sure they're operating properly, especially if you have central heating. It's a good idea to get somebody to check it, make sure it's working properly. And then, just making sure you have the supplies in case it does get cold again.
Right. And the other thing is making sure that you know that an oven is not a heating unit for your house. Your stove is not a heating unit for your house. I mean, there's so many problems that can come up with those things, but follow those guidelines. Check your make sure that your smoke alarms are working, your CO2 alarms.
This weekend, as we changing the clock, you fall back, so you're gonna move your clocks back an hour. Usually, the 2 times a year that occurs is a good time to check your batteries and your smoke detectors.
Yeah. So bring your dog outside. Don't let them hear that beep because that'll disturb them. But again,
Yeah.
Earl, I think it's been one of those things that we can be awfully thankful and appreciative for having. Even though it was a difficult summer, it was not a difficult summer as it relates to storms, named storms, or those that affected or impacted our area.
That's correct. And like I said, I'm praying for another one next year that we don't have any storms.
We're just putting it out there.
Yeah.
The year after the first year after Ida, we were like, oh, we just can't.
Yeah.
And this year we were like, oh man, we really just shouldn't. And now we're just saying, hey, if there's a chance, we're glad not to have it.
It's never too late to start praying that we don't have a storm. So.
Yeah. And look, interestingly enough, as we kind of close out this segment and move into the next one, some of the things that happen in our area, we've got some transition for people in temporary housing. We've got some movement, but there's still people that are dealing with those things that this winter may impact and affect, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more. Earl, we appreciate you sticking around as
Not
always.
a problem.
So Earl's going to do that. You do that with him. We're going to take a short break right here on Bayou Time. We'll be right back after this short commercial break.
Today's social media segment is brought to you by Terrebonne General Health Systems, modern technology, and timeless caring. Rouse's, you're either local or you're not. Buick, the craft of modern luxury. St. Martin and Bork, know your rights.
Hello and welcome back to this edition of Bayou Time. Again, your host, Keith Whiteside. Thanks so much for joining us. As I welcome back my friend and colleague, Earl Hughes, of course, Director of Emergency Preparedness for the Office of Homeland Security for Terrebonne Parish.
You got that down, Pat.
Thank you very much. I try. Yeah. I try. It's taken me 13 years, Earl, and interviews with you to get that done. But it's really interesting, as you guys with the parish, and we're so thankful for all of those people that work so very hard for and with the parish and all of the different roles. And so thank you. And to, again, all of our parish employees that work tirelessly. So many people have no idea how much time, effort, and energy goes into keeping the parish running. And as we go through this election, looking at, who's going to be our leader here moving forward, we're just looking forward to continued good leadership with that. So thanks for that. But as we deal with those kinds of things, I'm always thinking about those people that are really still struggling from Ida. I mean, we're 2 years and 2 months out, and there's still a number of people, 400 plus families, living in some of these travel trailers.
Well, we have 400, a little over 400 living in what we call the state trailers.
Right.
And we still have about 250 living in FEMA trailers at the parks themselves. Right. There's 2 FEMA parks, and then we still have FEMA trailers spread out throughout the parish.
Right.
So we still have about 1,200 families living in trailers.
Yeah.
Temporary housing.
Temporary housing. Right.
Due to Ida, which was over 2 years ago.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where I think some people maybe passing through main thoroughfares and they see Highway 311 near Rebecca Farm where they don't have any trailers there, and it was transitioned very, very quickly. That doesn't mean all of those people have found permanent housing.
That's correct. So they had very few, a few trailers left in at Rebecca is what we used to call it. So they were able to move those trailers into commercial trailer parks so that they could close down that little area.
Right.
And then, so like you're right, we still have people in trailers. People still have some housing needs.
Right.
And the parish is in the state and along with the federal government, we're trying to find a solution for these people that are still in temporary housing.
And it's really, really interesting that at that area, so we talk about Rebecca because it's very close to my house, it was one of those areas that got impacted by the smoke. this year. And we had a lot of smoke to deal with this year. And it was because of the heat of the summer. It was because of the dryness of the summer. It's why we're still currently under a burn ban. But we've had quite a few of these fires that have come up and dealt with.
Yeah, the largest one we had to deal with was, in the Savannah, we call it the Savannah Road area fire, in that drainage basin that the parish owned. I have to give it to Parish President Gordon Dove for, getting the necessary equipment out there to snuff out that fire. It's a large acreage. The smoke was affecting a lot of people. Never really encroaching on any structures.
Right.
Okay. But the smoke was just horrible.
Yeah. It was difficult. I mean,
and I think about the accident that occurred on I-55, along with the fog and the smoke. At times on Savannah Road, we had to close it down because there was so much smoke you couldn't see in front of you.
Right.
So, they had to close Savannah down. But, with the drought that we experienced, and then we're still in a drought.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
It's we just don't have the rainfall and the moisture in those areas that used to keep those fires down. At the present time, we have a little area that's smoking along the Bull Run Road.
Right.
And
that's the forested area. It's a little bit different.
And some pictures they're showing right there. Parish President Dove has mobilized equipment out there to build a fire line. Basically, that's a large area so that it doesn't cross from one point to the other point. So I think there's 100 acres out there that could be affected, and very little water capacity in that area to be able to pump it in there and flood it. So that's what the parish is in there at the present time, creating a fire line so that it doesn't cross that line. So, we're still under a burn ban.
Yes.
So, residents should understand that outside burning of wood, like in fire pits, is prohibited.
And that's a good reason why. Like we're looking at why.
Exactly. I mean, the ashes can travel a long way in the wind. So, and like I said, everything's still really, really dry, and especially on days of very low humidity,
right?
You're more susceptible to having fires in forested areas, and that's why in the last couple of days we were under a fire watch,
right?
From the National Weather Service. So, so hopefully we'll get some rain,
right? And we're hoping for it.
Try to bring a little more water into our area. I received somebody was complaining last week that there was a kind of like a sulfur smell along Bayou Terrebonne, along Highway 24, Main and West Park.
Okay.
There's not a lot of water flowing down Bayou Terrebonne, and as you have less water, you start getting anaerobic activity occurring
and smells,
and so you get
it releases
when it's
those
anaerobic,
gases.
It releases like a sulfur smell, like a sewer smell,
right?
So we really need to get some water flowing down Bayou Terrebonne, and we need some rainfall in order for that.
It's really interesting. We love it when the wind picks up a little bit. We love it when the humidity drops. But right now, we really need some water to help us with that.
Yeah, and just to remind residents, there is no burn ban for the agricultural industry.
Right.
So the sugarcane farmers are going to start burning the leaves that they leave down in the field. So you'll see them, but a lot of that's a controlled burn.
It's managed.
Right. So and they need to do that in order to protect their crops.
Right.
So if people see that, just know that they're being watched and controlled.
Yeah. So, Earl, we need to take another short break, but I want to talk about what some of this smoke has kind of been and done for other people. And as we think about what the wintertime is like as we move into the winter season and some of this cold and flu stuff, we're going to take another short break. Take that with us. We'll be right back with Director Earl Hughes.
Today's social media segment is brought to you by Alford and Associates for all of your insurance needs. CIS, Cardiovascular Institute of the South, the highest quality cardiovascular care available. Barker Honda, the Barker family tradition of quality.
Hello everyone. Welcome back to this edition of Bayou Time. Again, your host, Keith Whiteside, licensed clinical social worker with Terrebonne Home Care. Very glad you're joining us. However, you may be joining us. Always glad to get updates, information, news, and intel. Director Earl Hughes, Department of Homeland Security, Office of Emergency Preparedness for Terrebonne Parish.
Close.
I know that there's like 3 subject matters in there, and I like to mix them up a little bit. So, it's really interesting is we spend a lot of time talking about the smoke and this fire. We got another smoke area here in the forestry, but it's interesting how the winds make a difference, both in the fire spreading or the potential for it spreading, and then whom it affects.
Yeah, we saw that during the Savannah Road area fire. And one day it blows out of the north. Even on the same day, you will get southerly winds on out of the south, and the wind blows different, and it's moving the fire in a different area. When Parish President Gordon Dove says, let's flood the whole area, that was very important because it prevented it from kind of moving,
Right.
in and out of its area.
We took a little bit more control of it that way.
Yeah, and I mean, we had phone calls and people complaining about the smoke, and because some people do have an issue, especially if you have asthma.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. A lot of these lung conditions are really negatively impacted by smoke.
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty much saying, look, if you have another place to go, like a relative or something, try to go over there. If not, then you need to kind of seal off your house the best you can to keep the smoke from coming in.
In my situation, living in the lakes, the doggy door was one of those things that we were closing it. We were controlling the dogs going in and out. There were times they wouldn't want to go out.
Oh, I believe it.
Because they were afraid.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of built in for them. Like, I'm not going out in the smoke.
Yeah. And then, I was sitting in my house in Summerfield, and the chimney flue was still open.
Right.
So when that flue's still open, the air is going through it's pulling air through the chimney. So it was actually pulling the smoke in through the eaves and into your house, and then out through the chimney.
Wow.
So I had to go close flue,
that, right?
Because it was bad in some areas.
My next door neighbor packed up the camper. They went over to the Civic Center.
Yeah.
They you're just 3 miles away, 4 miles away. Much better for them. And so for a lot of these people, it's one of those things where we kind of come into this winter time and people have a little trouble with allergies, but that smoke kind of can lead into having some more medical problems. Mm-hmm. And then that kind of leads into our cold and flu season, And so it's really interesting because I think very often people, are still doing a very good job of saying, you know what, let me test to see what this is. And I think people are being a little more vigilant. I think people have kind of heard your message over the years. If you don't feel well, stay home and go get your test and see what it is. Because if it's the flu, man, I can tell you lately, a lot of the people that I've been talking to with flu lately, it's been far worse than anything else that they've had.
Yeah, well, we're back out into the crowds. We're back out hanging out with each other and doing things as groups and with our families, and which I'm glad, okay, that we're doing those things. But then we're more susceptible just to getting the flu or even the COVID. Right. I've talked to quite a few people that had COVID the past few weeks. Now, it's a bad cold.
Right.
Okay, and they're treating it with over-the-counter drugs.
Right.
But they're taking a test.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad to see that. Most people, they're not feeling well and they think they're sick. They're going by a test or getting somebody to go get a test for them. And they're coming home. They're testing if they're having COVID, and they're staying home.
Right.
The protocol now is home for 5 days and then 5 days with a mask if you go back to work.
Right.
But it's kind of like the flu. If you got the flu pretty bad, you're probably gonna stay home 5 days anyway.
Yeah, I tell you, I had an upper respiratory infection. Just one of those things. I tested for the flu. I tested for COVID 3 times. For me, it was just I want to make sure that I know so that I'm protecting myself and other people.
I had the same thing. It took me 2 weeks to get over that.
Yes. Yeah, the cough would not go away.
Yeah. So,
right?
And everybody I've talked to that's kind of had that respiratory infection, upper respiratory, they said, yeah, it just lingers for a little while.
Yeah.
So, but it's hard to get in a doctor's office.
Well, yeah, and it you know what? It's hard to want to go, but look, they're busy.
Yeah, they're busy,
and they're taking care of a lot
especially
of
this
people.
time of the year when everybody's sick too.
Yeah,
it's hard to get in
and we're seeing it in the schools some.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing some of the schools.
Right.
We're actually seeing a little bit more COVID in some of our facilities again. And again, we're vigilant about those things, and we're watching those things, and we're testing for that. and we're keeping people safe. And I think we're doing a much better job. We've learned along the last 3 years, three and a half
Right.
years, 4 years.
And if there is another vaccine out available,
Right.
that you can get,
And you can do them together, right?
So
The flu and the
I'm
vaccine.
not sure about
Okay,
that.
all right.
But I know
I've seen some of the commercials.
I
That's the only
know
reason
there's
why I
another
said that.
COVID vaccine that's
Okay.
available, and it's going to kind of do like the flu. I think through the years, as they know what the strain is, they're going to come out with a COVID vaccine, or I guess we ought to call it the COVID shot, okay?
Right,
Because that's what it's going to be like getting a flu shot every year.
right.
So, but for those that are the elderly and those that are more susceptible to other getting sick, they probably should look into talking to their doctor about seeing if
Yes,
it's okay to
yeah.
get a COVID vaccine.
Talk to your healthcare provider
correct.
and talk to them about, my mom and dad went and got their flu shots, and they got the COVID shot as well. You and I talked about it. We've gotten ours as soon as we can.
Yep.
And it's just one of those ways that we want to keep everybody safe and healthy. Speaking of safe and healthy, as we look into November, we certainly wish you, your family, and your work family with the parish a very safe and healthy holiday season as we enjoy this cool weather coming through. We'll see if we can handle the fires while we're dealing with the cool weather. But we certainly wish the best for you, your family.
Same to you, Keith, and everyone here at HTV. And just as a reminder, remind people to please go out and vote.
Yes,
for the
absolutely.
upcoming election, and early voting will start Friday.
Friday, November the 3rd.
Right.
Extended hours, which is exciting as well. Earl, always appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Keith.
All right, my friend. All right, guys, that'll do it for this particular segment and this Bayou Time. Don't go anywhere. A lot more local programming right here on HTV.